Chiefs Kingdom, welcome back to All Chiefed Up. We're back with another podcast for that ass. Today we're going to be talking about the guys the Chiefs have interviewed at the draft combine and maybe who they'll be picking come April. Mike, let's talk about it.
Right, before we get going, you guys hit that like button, hit that sub button. What are you waiting for? Our families are starving out here, Steve. Let's go. Let's talk about these combine. We're going to actually go all the way back to the Shrine Bowl. So the first person we've talked to, and this is in no particular order, but the first one we're going to get to today is Theo Johnson, tight end from Penn State, Steve. Theo Johnson come out of nowhere, actually, in this draft process. His PFF grade overall in 2021 was bad. It was a 50. In 2022, it was a 70. And then last year, did it get worse? Did it get better? It got worse, down to a 62.5. And his production just wasn't there either. But the dude is very athletic. Just look at his combine numbers this week.
Right, the guy's a beast. He actually ranked third overall in athleticism for tight ends at the combine this week. So third overall, that's pretty good. He's a good-sized guy, Mike. He's 6'6", 259 pounds, 33-inch arm length, 10.25-inch hand length. I mean, he's a big human. He's a big guy. He's very athletic, and like you can pull that RAS score back up there, Mike. 9.99 on the RAS score? What the hell?
Dude, this guy actually, out of like 1,100 tight ends to ever be ranked since 1987, he is number 2, and he would have been number 1 if you look down here at the 3-cone drill. It's in the yellow. He accidentally knocked over a cone. If he didn't knock the cone over, he has a perfect 10 score, and he's the number 1 of all time, Steve.
Hey, that cone come back and said, nay, nay, you won't get a perfect RAS score. Nay.
You know what cones he'd like to be knocking? I don't know where we're going with that one, but I'll tell you this, Steve. Theo, he didn't have a lot of production, only about 350, 400 yards on the season. But right. I will say this, man. He's a red zone threat. I think he had 7 touchdowns this past year. He's pretty athletic, as you can see. And I think with that combine score, Steve, he went from being a unknown, middle of the pack, maybe day 3 guy, to now he's day 2. And the Chiefs may have to come up in day 2 to get a guy like this because he may now be tight end 3 behind Bowers, Jatavion Sanders. That might be the only 2 guys in front of him.
Right. I had him right there, probably late 2nd, 3rd round pick, right beside Ben Sinnott from Kansas State. I thought they were pretty neck and neck as far as that went. But they both had great combine weekends. But I'm with you, man. I think he's definitely might have pushed himself into round 2.
Right, and speaking of another interview for the Chiefs and another tight end, Steve, Jatavion Sanders out of Texas. We watched film on this cat, and he was completely insane. He was running away from people on film. He just looked amazing. He had 45 receptions last year. He played slot snaps. He had 90 snaps from the slot, man. So he can play all over the yard. He had 67 targets, 45 receptions for 682 yards. He only had 2 touchdowns, though, which is a little strange. You would think a guy there in that Texas offense that would demand that much. But when you've got a big-time running back, you've got Xavier Worthy on the outside, you've got A.D. Mitchell out there, there's a lot of targets had to be going around. But Jatavion Sanders, Steve, he's pretty good. If you want to bring up his RAS, check this out. He scored an 8. Now, that's nowhere near Theo Johnson, but it's because of his height weight, Steve. Why are they so down on him? I guess because he's only a 6-foot-tall wide receiver that weighs 245 as a tight end. You know, when Kelsey come out, Steve, Kelsey was 6'5", 260. Do you think he looked – does Kelsey even look that big on the field, which is crazy?
He's not 6'5". Kelsey's not 6'5". I'll argue it. I think it was a few years ago at camp. I'm looking at him eye to eye, Mike, eye to eye. I'm 6'3". I don't think he's
closer
he's
to 6'4", to be honest.
Yeah, I think somewhere. But Jatavion Sanders, man, this kid, they don't like that he's a little bit shorter, right? That's the big knock on him. But I'll tell you who he reminded me of when we watched the tape. He reminded me of Baltimore Ravens Isaiah Likely. I think that they were very similar. I like the athleticism.
Right.
It's funny because Jatavion Sanders is listed at 6'4", 245 according to NFL's Combine website. So I think there's something's off there. We're not sure how big this guy is, but I don't think we should look that far into it because, I mean, he's somewhere between 6'1" and 6'4", which is sufficient height.
I
would
think
say,
they're right either, man, because even PFF's actual website has him at 6'4", 243.
He does not look 6'1", I will tell you that. On tape, he looks much bigger. He reminds me straight up of Isaiah Likely, who is, Mike, 6'4".
I'm going to say this,
by the
Steve.
eye test,
I think their RES is messed up. Where it says 6.037, I think that's supposed to be 6'3" and 7. So why that they would call
off there?
But why they would call 6'4" a 4.5 as a poor composite score is beyond me. So I think something's a little off because I read that as 6 foot, but I think it's 6'3" which means he's almost 6'4". So I think something might be off there.
Yeah, man, for sure, man.
He can catch the ball in contact, by the way. If he gets you on the hip, he's going to use that big frame. He's a little lazy in his route running, but he does run good routes. But he's big. Now, the only knock I've seen on Jatavion Sanders is that sometimes he gets bullied a little bit. Like, he's not as strong getting through the breaks and different things. But sometimes it just takes being behind the right people and learning the right things. And you kind of rely on your size. When you're not playing against people up to your caliber a lot, you get a little lazy, right?
Right. Well, this guy's a pass-catching tight end by all means. He's not going to go out there and throw out some George Kittle blocks. And I think that's the knock on him right now is they're saying that he needs to get a little stronger for his blocking, his inline blocking. They say that it allows defenders to play through his base blocks.
Right.
That seems to be the knock on him. So you look at the guy's strength, they're saying he's got the size and play strength to play through route traffic, but they don't like the way that he blocks. Well coordinated, making leaping catches on the move, eventually outruns almost every linebacker across the field or up the seam. Frames off defender and catches with strong hands when contested. I'm telling you, Mike, this guy looked electric on film.
Right.
And I still think he's probably more around that 6'4" height. I don't think that's a knock on this guy.
Right.
I think, dude, he's rated the second highest production from the combine and second in total score in all of tight ends, which is actually ahead of Theo Johnson in both categories.
Right. I think Theo Johnson is more of a project. I think he's more of a project,
Right.
and I think Sanders is more of a plug-and-play kind of guy right now. Steve, who would you rather have? Presumably, you would have to take Sanders in the first round. Theo, you may be able to get him in the second or come up early in the second to take him. I don't think Theo can slide into the first, although with almost a perfect 10 RAS score, we've seen crazier stuff happen.
Absolutely. So I guess personal opinion, I think if you're going to try to get somebody that you're going to take a big shot on and use a lot of draft capital on to maybe replace Travis Kelce in the future, I think you go ahead and take a stab at Jatavion Sanders, a guy that's already proven it's not a project. He might be a late first round, early second round pick. But I mean, seriously, if it's going to be a big piece for you going forward, losing a third round, late second round pick is not
Right.
a chump change either. So I think if you're gonna take a stab at tight end here, you might want to go ahead and do that, unless they already have someone in mind that they're taking in the first round.
Right. Hey, guys, if you didn't know by now, we partnered up with our friends over at FOCO. We're bringing you all kinds of Chiefs merchandise. Use our code CHIEFEDUP10 and get your Super Bowl champions back-to-back merchandise. We've got bobbleheads with Mahomes, Kelce, Chris Jones. We even got KC Wolf. We've got plenty of others over there. You can go check them out. Plus, they sell tumblers. They sell gnomes. They sell wristbands, Steve. Look at that one. But yeah, they've got everything. Check the description. Hit up our link. Let them know All Chiefed Up sent you, and grab yourself something commemorative from FOCO. Let's jump over to the defense a little bit, Steve. Mizzou on the board here with Darius Robinson. This dude was a team captain. He was awesome. Back in his first few years, he played inside. They've recently kicked him out to the outside now. He had 11% win rate, Steve, on the inside. But when they kicked him out to the defensive edge, he was out playing a 5 technique, a 7 technique. He even played some 9. He had a 16.2% win rate, Steve. This cat is huge, 6'5", 296, and his wingspan is massive. He has Chris Jones length arms at 34.5. That come in at the combine, Steve. But his RAS score, he's a flat-out monster. The one knock would have been his 40-yard dash, a 4.95. But that's still rated an 8.88, and they called it great for his speed. 1.73 10-yard split, that's right there in the gold standard. He had a 35-inch vert, a 9-foot broad jump. The dude's explosive. He's a little, they say he only come in at 285 for the combine. So that's 11 pounds lower than his playing weight. So presumably this is what these guys do, though. They come in to get to the combine, and they want to run faster and this and that. We'll talk about that in a little bit because there's a little controversy going on right now with a specific 40-yard dash. But Steve, Darius Robinson is a flat-out beast, and he's a jack of all trades. I can see Steve Spagnuolo, by the way, who he called the GOAT, and he called Andy Reid the GOAT, and he's calling everybody the GOAT over there. This kid respects it. He respects Missouri. He's from Detroit. So there's some rumors that Detroit's looking at him at 29. Steve, is this a pick that you would like if the Chiefs was to take this guy at 32?
if anyone complained about taking him at this pick, they would probably be mistaken. I think this is like if you look at the stuff from the combine and the word in the NFL execs and all that, they're saying that this guy's pretty close to a can't miss pick.
Wow.
I mean, overall, first in production score at the combine, first in total score in defensive ends, and fourth in athleticism score, Mike. So,
right.
I mean, he's pretty much just knocking everybody out right now. Like you said, he's freaking 6'5", 285 pounds. The guy is a monster, man. They say right out of the gate, Robinson's physical attributes should give him potential advantage in head-to-head matchups, and they're saying that he is easily going to be a plus starter. So, I mean, This is a guy that they're saying that you can't miss on. I think if the Chiefs decide to go defensive line in the first round, then by all means, snag this guy up.
Right. If he's there, I don't know how you pass him up. To me, it just sounds like a new toy for Spags. And again, we don't have many guys under contract at defensive end. We've got George Karlaftis. We've got last year's first-round pick, Felix. We've got last year's fifth-round pick, B.J. Thompson. And then we got Charles Omenihu, which is coming off an ACL injury. So there's not much there. Again, free agency's coming up in a few days. So we'll see how that goes. Steve, moving back to the offensive side of the ball, Ryan Fowler said UTSA, Texas San Antonio wide receiver Josh Cephus was a popular name at the Hula Bowl the last few days. So the Hula Bowl took place before the Shrine, took place before the Reese's Senior Bowl, but it said he met with the Bears, Vikings, Jags, Commanders, Chargers, Saints, Chiefs, and Broncos, among others. He's a 6'3" wideout, totaled 2,136 yards and 16 touchdowns the last two seasons. High athletic profile, Steve. Joshua Cephus is a complete monster. Look at the rocks on this dude, the guns on this bad boy. He's illegal in 48 states. This guy can't even go to Chicago, Steve. You don't have a permit for those bad boys. Steve, you like Josh Cephus as a late round kind of steal. Do you still think that that's something the Chiefs may target?
Absolutely, man. I watched tape on all the receivers, and this guy kind of stuck out to me as a guy that you can grab late, and he could be an absolute steal. If you look at the scouting report on him, they say that his strengths are he transitions quickly from receiver to runner. Cephus has enough speed to threaten the seam. Balanced, savvy route runner with top field awareness, setting up and selling routes. He also has value as a catch and run threat, running hard, consistently picking up yards after the catch. That's the kind of stuff that Andy Reid likes. Also, he's an excellent blocker on the outside. He also adds value in the running game. That's also something that the Chiefs value. I know we all hated Marquez Valdes-Scantling being on the team last year, but it was the little intangible things that were keeping him on the field. When we
this guy has them.
Exactly. When we thought that he shouldn't be getting snaps because he couldn't catch a cold, he was out there making blocks, and that's what was keeping him on the field. If you can replace him with a younger guy that can do everything he can do, and you can get him in the 5th, 6th round of the draft, that's a good shot to take, man.
Steve, he wasn't invited to the combine. He's a small school guy. We don't have a RAS score on him right now. We don't have a lot. He don't even have a PFF profile as of right now. So there's not a lot on this guy. It's hard to even find tape on UTSA, although they are in Conference USA, which means you'll have to dig a little bit, but you can find it. And I recommend people to go out and find some highlights. Steve, let's move back to the offensive side of the ball. Well, we're on the offensive side of the ball, but let's go to the big uglies, by the way.
The big uglies,
Price
baby.
Carter had said that the Chiefs meet with a potential left tackle of the future. Patrick Paul out of Houston, Steve, a formal interview. It says this. On Saturday, it was reported that the Chiefs met with tackle prospect during the 2024 Combine. So this was just the other day. Per Aaron Wilson, the Chiefs had a chance to sit down with Houston tackle Patrick Paul. Brett Veach said this the other day, by the way. He told the KC Star, Wanye had a chance to get his feet wet, and there was some good, and it wasn't perfect. It was, I think, what you'd expect from a rookie. But I think the ability's there, and I think there's a great platform and foundation for him now moving forward. So we'll do what we do every year. We'll try to develop some competition there and some depth there at left tackle. Steve, Patrick Paul is a monster. If you look at his RAS score, a 9.69. He is 6'7.5", 331 pounds, and his 10-yard split is a 177 and a 29-inch vert on a guy that is 6'7". He can flat out move. He can flat out move his feet. He can stay in, like, he gets to the second level. I think Patrick Paul is a great option. And I don't think you'll be able to get Patrick Paul after the second round. It's possible he may be there in the third, but I think the third is his absolute floor.
I think it would be a great pickup for the Chiefs. We all know they need depth on the offensive line. This guy has potential to be a starter in the NFL on the left side there. I mean, he's got extremely long arms with the ability to land first strike. Dude, is that not what the Chiefs love in an offensive line? Look,
Right.
I mean, look at the arms on that guy in the picture you just had there.
Steve,
That's
we
something
tried.
the Chiefs are going to be drooling over it. You know who he reminds me of, Mike? I can't remember which draft it was. It was recently, last couple of years. I think his name was Nicholas Petit Freer.
Yep.
He played for Ohio State
Ohio State.
University. He looked much like them. I think the guy plays for the Titans now. I'm not for sure, but that's who he reminds me of coming out of college. And I think Patrick Paul would be a great pick for the Chiefs.
Yeah, I think he played against a good level of competition. I think he's ready to go. He's probably ready to go day one. I think he at least provides Wanye some kind of give and take. Who's going to win the job? Who's going to get better?
Some competition, some healthy competition.
Right, and you can still go back and maybe get Donovan Smith at a cheap price to come in. You got to keep buffing it up. Look, we've tried this over the years. We've tried to draft Lucas Niang. We've tried Darian Kennard. We have tried to get tackles in here that are just not working out the way we thought. I think Patrick Paul's a little bit different. Steve, let's stay on the offensive side of the ball, and let's go to a wide receiver that I absolutely love in this draft, Steve, and that is Georgia wide receiver Lad frickin' McConkey. You would think he was 3 foot tall, redheaded, and had a pot of gold with a name like Lad McConkey, Steve, but he don't. He's just got a gaudy-looking RAS score is what he comes with, an 8.88, Steve. He took a knock for only being 5'11". He took a knock for only being 186. But he's not that little. He's 186. I think Xavier Worthy showed up to the combine at like 150 pounds. You could blow that guy over just by doing this. Like, it's not even going to be close. But Steve,
I'm completely fine with 6 foot 186, which is what they weighed him in at the
Lad
combine.
McConkey is a beast, Steve. In my opinion, he is close to Cooper Kupp. And I don't just say that as a lazy, hey, it's a white receiver. No, I don't say it. I say Cooper Kupp because why? Cooper Kupp come into the league and he was route savvy. He was ready to go. He contributed from day one. I think Lad McConkey does that. He's very smooth. Now, he did have some back injuries. He had a foot, ankle injury. That's why his production was down this year. But Lad McConkey's ready to go day one, Steve, and I think in our offense, he would be a flat-out monster.
An absolute beast, man. I'm with you. I've kind of comped him to Cooper Kupp a little bit myself. Obviously, that's like high end. That's what Lad McConkey could possibly be. NFL, they compare him to Elijah Moore, who's no pushover. But here's what a little excerpt of what they wrote about him, Mike, just so everybody can get an idea of what Lad McConkey is. They say if pass rushers have rush plans, McConkey has route plans to allow him to uncover all 3 levels. His pace and rhythm make cornerbacks more reactive than proactive. He has the footwork and body control to snap off crisp breaks and open windows for his quarterback. He can manipulate coverage with an advanced feel for leverage and has enough top-end speed to get past cornerbacks who are non-believers. He's very deceptive. He's very good. He's a very good route runner. He's very smart, and he ran a 4.3940 at the combine, Mike, which means he's very fast. So Lad McConkey could be a weapon for the Chiefs.
Lad McConkey, I said that I thought that he could possibly get himself to the first round if he can go sub 4.4. He did that. He went 4.39 like you said. He did that. They think his injuries are behind him. They think they're behind. We don't get to see medicals, but from everything I'm hearing, they think the medicals are behind him. He's good to go. Steve, he is smooth. He's got great hands. He looked good in the gauntlet drill at the combine. This kid is ready to go day one, and I think even if he falls into day 2, we're going to look back, and I've said this before, we're going to look back in a year or 2 years and say, how in the world did Lad McConkey get out of the first round of the 2024 NFL draft? So if he's there at 32, I think it's a very big possibility that the Chiefs may snag him. They've been on him ever since the Senior Bowl, in which he went down there and destroyed everyone.
Absolutely. Just to round that off, man, I'll keep reading what I was reading earlier. It says McConkey's 2023 injuries might have slowed the draft conversation about him, but his route polish, athleticism, and ability to uncover over the first 2 levels could make him a productive slot receiver even early day 2. So, I mean, even if he falls to day 2, just like you said, he's still going to be a beast. He's pro ready now. Right. And that's more than a lot of these other receivers coming out.
Good work ethic, by the way. Good kid. And one more little tidbit here. Matt Miller reports, fun fact, Lad McConkey and Patrick Mahomes have the same agent, Chris Cabot. There we go. Maybe he gets him in to throw with Patrick over the summer, and you never know. Steve, let's go back to defense. We're looking at another Mizzou player. Chiefs are sticking close to home here. We got Ennis Rakestraw Jr. He said he met with the Chiefs as Jace Andrews, a potential L'Jarius Sneed replacement, depending on trade value. Steve, he looks like Sneed. He really does. But I'll tell you this. He tests well when it comes to the one-on-one interviews. I heard he was off the charts. Teams absolutely love this guy. He's down to earth. He's got a solid football work ethic. The dude Missouri's been putting out players over the past few years. They've been putting out pro-style players. That's what Missouri has done. And Missouri looked good last year. They were maybe the best team in the SEC last year, arguably at times. But he didn't do himself any favors when it comes to the RAS scoring. The combine, he come in a little light at 183. He got blasted on that one. His broad jump was only a 10. He didn't even do a vert, by the way. So it didn't show any explosiveness. And then he ran a 4.54 40 that didn't really impress anybody either. But I will say, 8.5-inch hand size and an arm length of 32, pretty good. I would have rather to see with him being at a 4.54. I'd have loved to see the arm length get up to 33. But Steve, Ennis Rakestraw, very ball savvy. Like, he knows how to make plays on the ball. He's very instinctual. He can beat you to death in man-to-man coverage. He does kind of remind me, because he steps up and hits you in the run game. He reminds me a little bit. Him and TJ Tampa may be the two guys that remind me of L'Jarius Sneed.
Well, Rakestraw reminds me of a guy that came out of the draft a couple years ago from Auburn named Roger McCreary. They kept saying that he had too short of arms, but the guy was just excellent in coverage. Rakestraw, they say he's highly competitive with quality toughness at the position, a rough ride for receivers when he's jamming them from press. Who does that remind you of? Right. Excellent body control allows him to stay in phase against cornerback routes, drives hard to throw off coverage, and runs through targets, uses well-timed punches and slaps to disrupt the catch try, and salty in run support with willingness to wrap and lift ball carriers. He sounds just like L'Jarius Sneed on his strengths, and the first weakness they list from him sounds also like L'Jarius Sneed. Handsy play that will get flagged in the NFL.
Handsy, dude, the Chiefs love handsy corners. We love handsy corners. If I'm not mistaken, the only handsy corner we haven't actually drafted was our boy, the Warden. He wasn't known to be super handsy. Right. But Jalen Watson was known to be handsy. Josh Williams was known to be really handsy. That's what we go after. Dude, we're always handsy. Look back at Felton and all those cats that we've had.
This is why I thought the Chiefs were interested in Roger McCreary a couple of years back.
Right.
Or I can't remember if it was last year or the year before, but I really thought they were interested because that's exactly the way he played, and that's what the Chiefs like. So if they were to take a flyer on Rakestraw here early in the draft, I wouldn't be super surprised.
Now, look, Rakestraw,
like I was saying earlier, Mike, I don't think that they need to go corner.
Okay,
but if they did, I wouldn't be mad at it.
Rakestraw's recovering from a pretty bad injury. I think it may have been an ACL.
He had an ACL injury.
He's a year removed though, so he come back this year and he played. So this will be his second full season coming back from it. I'm sure his medicals are going to test out fine, but between the medicals and between him not scoring so well at the combine, he has taken a dip. I thought he could get into the first round, and he still may get there. But again, this may be a round 2 kind of guy. But when we're picking at 32, you got to consider that because it's hard to get all the way up in round 2. So let's move on back to the offensive side of the ball, Steve. And this one is weird. You mentioned it before. We seem to be targeting a lot of first-round guys, and we don't usually do that. We target guys that we think are steals later in the draft.
Right. And, usually when we're talking about guys that the Chiefs are interviewing, it's always guys that you're like, oh, well, that's strange.
Right.
But this year it's more like top-end guys that they're talking to, like guys that are going to go in day 1, day 2.
And speaking of that, they spoke to Taliese Fuaga, offensive tackle, Oregon State. People are high on him, and they're saying that this cat could go top 15 at the worst, probably top 10. People have been on him like hard. His RAS score is a 9.44. He's 6'5", almost 6'6", 324. He had a 32-inch vert and a 9-foot broad jump as an offensive tackle. He ran pretty well, too, a 1.77 10-yard split. Steve, I don't think we got a chance of getting this cat, but at the same time, if you get that L'Jarius Sneed trade and you was to get that second first-round pick, say the Detroit Lions at 29, could you presumably package 29 and 32, get up in the top 15, and get yourself a big ugly like this and solve that left tackle problem once and for all for the next 10 years?
Absolutely. I mean, if that's the route they wanted to go, I know a lot of people are very interested in Joe Alt, but I think he's just out of the realm of possibility. This is a guy that might not be. Like, they think he's a top 15 pick, but by all means, he could be there at 15. So, I mean, if the Chiefs wanted to try to get into the mid-first round, if this guy were to fall to that position, then yeah, I mean, I think he's definitely a piece. We talked about another one that they looked at earlier, which was Patrick Paul. I think he's a step up from Paul.
Oh, yeah.
It's nothing crazy, but there is a step up in between the two. So if they wanted to go that route, by all means, I think that tackle something that the Chiefs need to
Right.
Address in the offseason. So if they want to do it via the draft, then so be it. There's not a whole lot of options in free agency. We've covered that on other videos.
Right.
So if they decide to go tackle in this draft and do it early, I mean, then who better than this guy?
Right. Fuaga, for me, is a top 10 pick. I think he's that all day long, and at the worst, he slides no further than 12, 13. I think it'd be hard-pressed to get him by the Jets because Aaron Rodgers needs somebody unless they're going out and spending big money in free agency. Who knows? But I think that's the one guy that's almost like saying, hey, we talked to Malik Neighbors. Good luck. Good luck going getting him or Marvin Harrison Jr., right? The next guy on the list, Steve, lit up the combine like crazy. Xavier Worthy, Texas. He ran the 4.21, broke the combine records, went ape. His RAS score, Steve, though, only shows a 9.37. Why is that? Why is he not higher? Because he's only 5'1". 5'11", not 5'1". I'm sorry, I read that wrong. If he was 5'1", we'd have some serious problems.
It'd be hilarious.
He's 5'11", 165. He scored a .35 on his weight, Steve. He did have a 41-inch vertical, which means he is super twitchy, and he can explode. A broad jump of almost 11 feet. He runs a 40, and they said 4.22, but I think that got corrected to 4.21. Is that right? Was it 4.21 corrected? Okay, yep. A 20-yard split of 2.48 and a 10-yard split of 1.5. So this dude could flat out fly. He didn't even run any agility test or anything because he didn't do on-field stuff. He said he wanted to let somebody else shine. Steve, him and his counterpart, A.D. Mitchell, flew down the field in the 40. But the little controversy here from Xavier Worthy is that he weighed in at 165. That was not his playing weight. They're saying that his playing weight was closer to 175 to 180, maybe even 185, and that he wanted to break this all-time record so much that he lost a bunch of weight to get faster at the combine. So what you see, is it what you get when you put the pads on and you get him back to his playing weight? Is he still 4.21?
Yeah, probably not. I mean, by all means, when you get to these guys that can run this type of speed, it doesn't necessarily translate to the football field. It could be another John Ross, a guy like that. You still have to be a football player. It doesn't matter how fast you are, right?
Right.
But, you're talking about the RAS score. NFL Combine didn't really account the height, weight, the way the RAS score does, and they have Xavier Worthy as number 1 overall in athleticism in the wide receiver room.
Right.
So I think this guy is definitely an athlete. He's somebody to take a shot on. I'm not saying he plays like him, but the guy from Tennessee last year, Jalen Hyatt, that was a guy that's like, you were kind of taking a shot on a guy that's just super fast and athletic, could stretch the field. It'd be the same type of deal with Xavier Worthy here. Hyatt worked out pretty well for the Giants, I think, more than we thought he was going to. Maybe Worthy could do something like that, Mike. I'm not for sure. I'm not sold on the guy completely, but I do know that 40 time and the popularity that comes with it, that's going to push him up this draft board, and I don't know if he's worth where he will end up being drafted. I'll just say that.
Right. Xavier Worthy, I had him probably as a mid-second round talent. When I went and watched him, I didn't think he ran the greatest routes. I'm not saying he was bad, but he did not. He was not good in contested catches. To me, he does provide special teams kind of stuff. He provides stretching of the field. He's not the best blocker. He's not going to block. Look how little he is. He's not going to block very well. He struggled getting off the line. He struggled against physical DBs. And Ennis Rakestraw gets your hands on you, and he's going to destroy you. But the thing is he is a gadgety guy. He is in the mold of what Brett Veach and them want, the Tyreek Hill, McCole Hardman-esque type of players. You want to get him the ball in space. But look, I just didn't fall in love with him as a football player, although he is good. He was dropping balls a year ago. Come to find out, he had a broken hand he was playing through, said Steve Sarkisian. He's a good, tough kid. I have nothing against him, but I think as a football player for me, he was a mid to early second round player just because he lost a bunch of weight and ran a 4.21. Do I really want to now throw him up into the top 15? I don't, but some team out there is going to fall in love with the speed, and they're going to do it.
I'll tell you what, a lot of the conversation in the draft rooms coming draft day about Xavier Worthy, it's probably going to be two guys in there going back and forth on it. Like,
right.
He's a thin frame. He can't get off a press. He's not strong enough. And then the other guy's going to be like, yeah, but he's got freaking elite speed, doesn't he?
Right.
Whoever wins that argument, that's who's going to end up taking Xavier Worthy in the draft.
Right. Fastest 40 times in combine history, Steve. Tyquan Thornton, a 4.28. Didn't pan out too well so far. J.J. Nelson, a 4.28. Didn't do nothing. Jacoby Ford, 4.28. Nothing. Henry Ruggs, 4.27. We'll see how that worked out. Marquise Goodwin, 4.27. Nothing. John Ross III, 4.22. Not very good. Xavier Worthy, 4.21. None of these guys have had a 1,000-yard season. None have had 10-plus TD touchdowns in a year, Steve.
And that doesn't mean that he can't
shout
do
out
it.
Lance
That just
spoken, by the way.
It doesn't mean that he can't do it, but it just goes to show you that is not everything. And like I said, I think it'll be whoever wins that argument in the draft room amongst the teams themselves. Like, hey, are we going to try this guy?
If it comes down to pick 32, Steve, if it comes down to pick 32 and the Chiefs have Xavier Worthy and they also have Ladd McConkey on the board, which one you taking? You taking the speed or are you taking the sure thing ready to roll with Ladd McConkey?
Man, that's a very, very tough one right there, Mike. I don't have an answer for you right off the bat. I think you have to consider a lot of things. I think the only reason why I don't jump straight to Ladd McConkey is because of injury concerns and longevity concerns in the NFL. Xavier Worthy doesn't have that stigma, but I think Ladd's more pro ready to go right now. So I think if we wanted production now, you go ahead and get him. If they're going to go try to sign someone like Calvin Ridley or Marquise Brown or someone like that and draft a guy, then yeah, maybe go ahead and take Xavier Worthy. We have time to develop the guy. But if you want production now, you take Ladd.
Right. Last player we're going to touch on right here is a running back, Steve. Bucky Irving out of Oregon. A lot of people like Bucky because why? He can catch the ball. He has a lot of production catching the ball. In 2023, he actually had 11 touchdowns, 55 receptions, 395 receiving yards, and he paired that up with 1,192 total yards, I believe is what that is. Or actually, though, that might be 1,200 on the ground, 395 in the air. So that's pretty crazy what he was able to do. He did force 69 missed tackles, which was tied for 11th in the NCAA. He had 15-plus yard carries. He had 18 of those, and he only had 3 drops, 743 yards after contact. So he can make you miss. He can also run through you a little bit. Steve, he's 5'9", 192 pounds. His RAS score, not that good. A 3.71. They didn't like his vert, his broad, his height, weight. They didn't really love his 40-yard dash at a 4.55, Steve. They think he's not explosive enough. They don't think he'll be able to compete in the big leagues up here. What do you think about Bucky Irving? Is that somebody you like or somebody you don't? I think he's fine for what we do in a way.
Yes and no. I do like Bucky Irving. He reminds me of Dameon Pierce. That's who the guy from Florida. That's kind of who I see when I see Bucky Irving. I think he's a very
much smaller frame though, right?
A little smaller, yeah. But I mean the same type of runner. I think the only knocks I have on Bucky Irving would be that sometimes he gets ahead of himself. Kind of like, obviously not the same speed and stuff, but Pacheco has that problem too. Like he always. That was his big knock his rookie season was, hey, you got to slow down. You got to be a little more patient here. I see that a lot in Bucky Irving. And one other thing I don't like, and the reason why I think he might not fit what the Chiefs want to do with a wide receiver, is he's not the best pass protector. He's got to figure that part out. That's one of the knocks that the NFL guys, the scouts have on him too, is that he's got to figure out how to be better at pass protecting against blitzers.
Right. If you're going to be McKinnon back, you got to learn how to protect the quarterback, by the way.
Absolutely. So how fast can he learn it?
Back.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, you meant running back. Like, look, I don't know where you would get Bucky Irving. The running back market's not that great. I don't think we really go to free agency and spend a bunch of money. Do we maybe get him in the 4th or 5th round? Maybe if you fall in love with him, but otherwise I think they still wait to the 6th, 7th if you can get some 7th round picks, some more draft capital, maybe go the UDFA route. I really like Dylan Lobb out of New Hampshire. I like a couple different guys, so I don't know if I want to spend draft capital on Bucky Irving, at least right now. I'd like to see what he does his pro day. But, Steve, before we go, a fun little exercise is I pulled up everybody we interviewed from last year, and we'll go through this list and see how many became Chiefs or were actually Chiefs targets, Steve. Here we go. We interviewed Derek Hall. He's not a Chief. We interviewed Keanu Benton, Nolan Smith, Jervon Dexter, DJ Johnson, Dalton Kincaid, and Jalen Hyatt. None of those guys became a Chief. Some of these guys we didn't have a chance to get, such as, the Nolan Smith, I think. I think Derek Keanu Benton went after we picked. Dalton Kincaid we couldn't get. Jalen Hyde, I think, went in the second round. So we passed up on them in the first. We wasn't enamored. Here's the next list. Defensive end from Rice, Akini Inechukwu. What a name. But I do see K-State's defensive end Felix Anudike Uzama on there.
Absolutely.
So there was our first-round pick. Dayan Henley, linebacker. Isaiah Foskey, defensive end. Adebore, defensive tackle. Dante Stills, defensive tackle. And a punter. So we've got one. At the Senior Bowl, we met with Ronnie Bell. At the Shrine Bowl, we met with DeJuan Johnson, Jordan McFadden, Daniel Barker. None of these guys. The Legacy Bowl, we met with Mississippi Valley State's Ja'Cory Rankin. Did not pan out. Hula Bowl, Alex Cook, Andrew Farmer. No, nay. We met with Darnell Wright, Tyler Steen, Matthew Bergeron, Broderick Jones, Wanye. We've got Wanye on the board. So we have two, Carter Warren, Anthony Bradford, Noah Sewell, and then the last few, Daniel Scott, DeMarvin Overshone, Lonnie Phelps, Archon Bush, Julius Brents, Trey Tucker, Leonard Taylor, Josh Wiley. Steve, two out of all of them, they grabbed two. Do you think it'll be similar this year? Do you think when it comes all said and done, we're going to have a list like that? Do you think the majority come out of that list, or do you think it's going to be the one or two, and then the rest of it's just going to be a guessing game?
Well, I think, like I was saying on the Spoken, and what intrigued Brian Parrott to even message you about this is, I was saying the reason why Mike and myself are sometimes able to guess who the Chiefs are going to draft. We've had a pretty decent track record so far. Toot, baby. Toot. But, no, I mean, you use a common sense logic thing to do. Like, who the Chiefs looking at? Who are they interested in? Who have they interviewed, right?
Right. Where do these guys fall relatively to where we pick?
Right. And not only, like, who is the person that they interviewed, but if they're interviewing a lot of defensive tackles, then you damn well bet they're looking to draft a defensive tackle. Right. So, I mean, you just have to use logic there. Will they take everybody from the pool that they interviewed? No, but I think there will be select guys. I think you're looking at least 2, 3, 4 guys, maybe even, that they've talked to that they will end up getting drafted, Mike. And that's just the way I see it. It's been that way almost every year. I know last year, a little bit of an outlier. They only took 3 of those guys?
2.
Just 2?
Just 2.
So, I mean, still though, I mean, you're going to get a hint of who they're going to get if you just pay attention to who they're talking to, man.
Right. Well, if you look at who we've looked at, a couple tackles. We knew that was a need. Right. Wide receiver, a couple wide receivers. We've seen that. You had the lone corner because they know L'Jarius Sneed's probably not going to be there. And then, of course, you're looking at 2 tight ends and some defensive linemen. These are all needs. If
you try to look at it from this perspective of what they've looked at early or who they've interviewed early, Mike,
right?
You would be hard pressed to say they're looking to get an early wide receiver because they've only talked to Xavier Worthy, McConkey, and Joshua Cephus. So by all means, Worthy and McConkey are basically day 2 guys. Cephus possibly day 3. So they're not
day 2 guys. They're day 2 guys, but I think they've played themselves into day 1 now.
Possibly.
So now that is maybe the Chiefs knew that they were going to play into day 1, and 32 was an option here.
I'm still thinking they could both be early day 2 guys, even with what they've done. It just depends on if a team bites on the speed as far as Worthy goes. If they can overlook the medical stuff that Lad McConkey's had to deal with. But if you look at who they have interviewed early, Mike, it's the tackles. They're talking to a tackle that could be a top 10 pick. So maybe they're looking at it from that perspective, like early, we might go after tackle. They're looking at day 2 tight ends. I mean, they're looking at, they're not out there looking at a wide receiver that we think is a surefire first-round pick. So I think people that think that the Chiefs are going to take a first-round wide receiver could be sorely mistaken when it comes down to it.
I don't think we trade up for the wide receiver. I think what I'm seeing is these guys are the late day 1 picks, and so that's what they're scouting. And in my opinion, if you would have seen that they come out and was talking to, maybe A.D. Mitchell now that he's played himself in, but no, I think if you see Brian Thomas Jr., somebody like that, I think that you would almost presume they might jump up mid first round, but I'm just not
that they are even thinking about it as a possibility. That's my thing.
Right. But this is just a fun exercise to go through. Thanks, Brian Parrott, for shooting that to us.
Shout out BP.
I'm sure we'll do more of these kinds of videos when more interviews become available. But that's going to do it for today. Guys, thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, hit that bell, and we'll catch you guys next time. Go Chiefs.